At this time last year, the Milwaukee Bucks were the most hyped team in basketball coming into the 2023-24 season. They had just acquired Damian Lillard, excitement was through the roof, and they were poised to be one of the top title contenders in the NBA. Well, as we know, it ended up being a season full of turmoil for the Bucks that did not exactly live up to expectations. Assistant coach Terry Stotts stepped down before the season even began, which raised some red flags. Damian Lillard took longer than expected to gel with the new team, and particularly with Giannis. The Bucks were bottom 10 in defensive rating the first 3 months of the season before firing first-year head coach Adrian Griffin. Doc Rivers took over and proceeded to have a losing record for the final 39 games. Chris Middleton got hurt in February and missed over a month. Then Giannis got hurt in April and ended up missing the rest of the season. Dame even got hurt in the playoffs and had to miss 2 games. The injured Bucks ended up losing in the first round of the Pacers in 6 games, and thus concluded the first year of the Giannis-Dame era in Milwaukee. And now everyone seems to have just forgotten about them. Milwaukee didn't have a flashy offseason with any big moves, and they became overshadowed by some of the other East teams who made big trades or free agent acquisitions, such as the Knicks getting Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns, and the Sixers getting Paul George. The general consensus about the Bucks seems more negative than ever, as they are currently 8th in title odds on FanDuel and are even being picked to be a play-in team by Bleacher Report and some others. It seems most people have made their mind up that the Bucks are no longer a major title contender. And I'm here to tell you something else. The Bucks are being massively underrated. Now look, I'm not saying the Bucks should be everyone's top finals choice or that people should be picking them ahead of Boston or anything like that. I understand they need to earn some trust back, and last year was a disappointment. But the disrespect has simply gone too far, and people have shifted too far in the other direction when it comes to this team. Let's start with Damian Lillard. Dame obviously had a bit of a down year last season and didn't quite live up to expectations in his first year in Milwaukee. However, his struggles have become very overblown, with several player rankings now putting him outside the top 20. Dame still averaged over 24 points and 7 assists on 59% true shooting last season. The only other players to put up those numbers were Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and LeBron James. On top of this, there are valid reasons why Dame had a slightly down year. He has openly talked about not being in great shape last season after not working out as much during the offseason. He dealt with personal struggles after a divorce and being away from his kids, and he struggled a little bit with transitioning to life in Milwaukee and playing for a new team with a new superstar. It's very reasonable to expect that Dame's second year should be a lot smoother. He grinded all offseason to get back in shape, including working out with David Goggins, and he now has a year under his belt playing alongside Giannis, so their chemistry should only get better. This could be a massive bounce-back year for Dame that makes people who doubted him look completely silly. Don't forget, this was a guy many people had as a borderline top 10 player a year ago. Next, let's talk about the coach. Obviously, last year, the Bucks had some coaching turmoil. They hired Adrian Griffin in the offseason just to fire him midway through the year, replacing him with Doc Rivers. Most people love to point out how the Bucks had a great 30-13 record under Adrian Griffin and a mediocre 17-19 record under Doc. Well, this coaching decision was obviously a terrible mistake, right? Well, when you look deeper into it, Giannis, Dame, and Chris were healthy for 32 out of 43 games with Adrian Griffin compared to just 6 out of 36 games with Doc. Doc really never got a chance to coach the true Bucks team that he signed up to coach. Even with the injuries, Doc improved the defense quite a bit in the second half of the season. It was pretty much a disaster under Adrian Griffin, with the Bucks ranking 23rd in second chance points allowed per game, 23rd in fast break points allowed per game, and 25th in points in the paint allowed per game. Under Doc, all of those numbers got a lot better. They went up to 8th in second chance points allowed per game, 4th in fast break points allowed per game, and 9th in points in the paint allowed per game. Doc had a difficult challenge of taking over a championship team in the middle of the season with another person's coaching staff. Now he has half a season plus an offseason with these guys under his belt, and he has hired his own coaching staff. Combine that with having his best players healthy again, and this should be a much easier year for the head coach. Speaking of health, that is something that is clearly at the top of the list when it comes to concerns with this Bucks team. They are one of the oldest teams in the league and have been bit by the injury bug a lot in recent years. There's definitely a reason to be concerned about injuries for this team, but at the same time, they largely have just been unlucky. Chris Middleton slipping on the floor in the 2022 playoffs, Giannis landing on his back in the 2023 playoffs, Chris stepping on Durant's foot last season. These are not necessarily injuries that are a result of bodies breaking down. They're just unfortunate accidents. Every team needs a little bit of injury luck to go their way if they want to win a championship. That isn't a Bucks specific thing. They just have not had that luck recently. However, if they can avoid being unlucky with injuries this time around, they have proven to have arguably the best core in the league when healthy. You may not think they've proven that, but the numbers say otherwise. In games that Giannis, Dame, Chris, and Brook all played together, the Bucks were 27-14, good for a winning percentage of nearly 66%, which would be 54 wins over an 82-game season. When all 4 of these players were on the floor together last season, the Bucks had a 97th percentile offensive rating, a 95th percentile defensive rating, and a 99th percentile net rating. Out of 117 4-player lineups with at least 400 minutes played, their net rating ranked number 1. That's right, no regular 4-player lineup in the league last season was as good statistically as this one. The problems with the Bucks last season largely came from the bench, as their defense off the bench was extremely poor, and anytime they suffered injuries or went to more bench lineups, their lack of depth and lack of consistently playable players in the 5th to 8th spots in the rotation showed. Well, the Bucks addressed those rotation spots in this offseason. They replaced Patrick Beverley with DeLon Wright for some point-of-attack defense and playmaking at guard. They replaced Jay Crowder with Taurean Prince, a versatile bench piece who can hit threes, play some defense, and be a small ball 4 when needed. And they replaced last year's starting shooting guard Malik Beasley with Gary Trent Jr., who's one of the best catch-and-shoot guys in the game while being an upgrade on defense over Beasley. While none of these moves were super flashy, they were 3 meaningful upgrades in the back half of the rotation that the Bucks needed. To get all these guys on minimum contracts is about as good as they could have possibly done this offseason with the limited resources they had. The elevator pitch on why to believe in this Bucks team is simple. They've been amazing with their best players on the court together. They added 3 impactful players in the offseason to address their needs. Dame appears primed for a bounce-back year, and they have much more continuity now than they did last season. Oh, and by the way, they still have arguably the best player in the world who's coming off possibly the best season of his career last season. Yes, last season the Bucks were probably overhyped, but this year things have shifted so far in the other direction that they've become underrated. Everyone naturally is going to gravitate towards the teams with the flashy new players, as they did last year with the Bucks, but don't forget about the team with Giannis and Dame just because of one disappointing first year. The Bucks are a sleeping giant right now, and it is very possible that this season they could end up looking like the team that everyone expected they would look like when they acquired Damian Lillard.